So I'm going through my live stream in Kata, and I've shared quotes from my journal with Yuri a few times, and then we discussed them in a voice call. And when I went through them explaining, somehow they all made sense, but just in text, he told me that when he see this. Mm. He told me that it didn't make any sense to him until I went through this content in a call. And it seems there is some interesting content here now and then. And Taisi even suggested accidentally that I'm writing a book, that these pieces are part of a book. It was his. What the fuck? Why it keep losing? Maybe this dot here, it's keep turning red today. And I thought, oh, would I publish it as a book someday? Or maybe I will die and somebody else will publish it. What the hell? So now I'm thinking that maybe instead of publishing, and recently Andrew Wilson was starting his series on his book. I have his book. Um, what the fuck? The Rainbow Machine. So why the fuck wouldn't it find Andrew Wilson? Such a bad software everywhere. Uh, so I have his book, and it was sitting on a shelf. I I wouldn't even look inside. Uh, I mean, not. It is probably good, but somehow it was lost in all the between all the other books. which is an interesting thing about priorities, the subject of my blog, the subject of my journal. So, and Austin, he started this series Tales from the Rainbow Machine, where he goes over this book. He goes over this book and gives a kind of an update what the chapter is all about and what changed in this time from where he wrote it. So it's an interesting precedent uh, of moving from written word towards YouTube content. Reformatting the book as short, very short YouTube videos. And it's also a natural. We've been talking through it recently. I mentioned loss of. Why wouldn't it give me relevant positions and it wouldn't remember the. Hmm. So Losif was actually a monk, a Christian monk, and he did books on Byzantine, but he was one of the hidden secret monks, I think. So in the Soviet times, when church was repressed and starting with the revolution, it was repressed. There was a kind of genocide. There was a methodical murdering, killing of basically anyone who was into Christian religion. And strangely enough, it was um, recently, a few years back, archives were opened, and one guy did a dissertation based on these archives, and he mentions how strangely for the government after the revolution, the major subject of their meetings was not the problems the country was facing, but the destruction of the church. Uh, it was it was kind of they thought that if they succeed in destroying the church, then it will be alright. uh, and so there was this methodological hunt, medieval hunt. So some people survived this hunt because they didn't kill like 100% of people, but there was a force that was like an immune system. So they thought maybe of church as a cancer, and they thought of themselves as immune system. And like immune system isn't always good at fighting the cancer, right? The cancer outgrows the efforts of immune system. So here we have the government methodology destroying the church, but still it has survived. It wasn't 100% destroyed. But it was then popular for monks and she monks to be secret monks. So they lived normal lives, but and Losif was one of such monks, as far as I can remember, and he was interested a lot in the history of Byzantine because it was for him the foundation of the church. And I heard from a teacher, an accidental teacher of the church history, kind of an interested researcher, historian, this opinion on Losif that he wrote like 12 books about history of Byzantium first. Next he wrote two books, and next he wrote one small book, uh, like a really thin. And it reminds me also of again of Andy Ocean's book, how he how he tells you how he tells his visitors to visit this book because it's really thin. and and it was like making the thought simpler, uh, finding better abstractions, right? So it shows us a bit of a natural process. Thinking sometimes go through this path of first a lot of complex facts. And why do we need all these complex facts and ideas? Because we want to converge. There is a verification process, like in a quorum, in a distributed system, a quorum. So all these different facts, they need to converge into some picture. And then we can begin to simplify because we have a certain um, level of validity uh, for the thought to proceed with making these abstractions. Uh, but what this teacher told us about philosophy is that this short book, nobody would understand it truly without reading through his 12 tomes. uh, so there is a value of in simplification, but when we simplify, it also go to like maxims, and it reminds me of Chesterton. I thought I missed this book recently. Alright. Chesterton orthodoxy. Guten. And you see this 103. Oh, so that's how I learned to find this book in the URL because you see they have no book, no book title and no book description in the URL. So now to find it, I have to type one, one, three, oh. Another case of broken, fundamentally broken software in user experience terms. Uh, so so he has this phrase, thoroughly worldly people never understand even the world. They rely altogether on a few cynical maxims which are not true. So when we simplify, we come to some maxims, some things that everybody knows actually. And this is something that Katsopa mentioned also in one of hmm, in reality of loneliness. And I'm hitting the URL several times in order to bump it in Firefox URL search. So Katsopa starts this presentation with how most of things discovered by science we already know. Um, but it's not that we don't know them, it's that we know them and something else. So we know A and we know B. So there are maxims and there are opposite maxims. And it's like a law system. So I have this book by courtroom psychiatrist. He writes how the law system uh, in the United Kingdom, I think, and in the United States and in these countries. So I know this to be true for Russia, but recently I learned that this is the case also in Western countries. So the legal system has a lot of opposing laws. So it's a labyrinth of opposites. And it's basically muddle water where you can kind of overcome the law due to its complexity. So it's kind of there is hidden psychological bonus here in keeping a law system that is such so muddy because this then it become becomes about skill of a prosecutor or the defender. And when it becomes about skill, it becomes about money. So it allows um, it allows the powerful people to be above the law and powerful organizations because sometimes there are backings, like a police officer who is backed by the police mm, institution. Uh, So it's become a rather than be something simple and strict, it become a playground. And this is also why I think blockchains would not be truly adopted because people need this playground that they created. And so people might adopt blockchains for a while because of this hype, but then it will go away and they will return to a system that the blockchains will become this complicated mess, or somehow else they will return to a system where basically there are people who can be above the law and the ground is unknown. So science, it doesn't tell us some new information often, but it clarifies that these are definitely works. We have experiments show that in these conditions these are works and not B. So it clarifies, and so this is why we need this complexity in order to converge on something, right? But maxim on themselves, they are already known. It's just in order to orient in the world, it's not enough to have the maxims because there is a lot of maxims. Uh, and also something I talked about yesterday is that maxims do not provide us with a richer representation of a solution space. So we know that some simple maxims that to do this we need to do that, but they don't provide us with how to do that. With this embodied implicit knowledge of how to do it. And this knowledge is uh, partly obtained by enriching our mental uh, representation. So we have two opposing directions. One of simplification and another of elaboration. Uh, and we, paradoxically, we need to go both ways. We need to elaborate, to go deeper into something at times, and then we need to simplify. And this is also about layers. I talked recently how this deliberate practice creates this movement of information between layers, between the theory and the practice, the verbal theory and pre-verbal embodied practice. Um, but it also, the verbal part is also has different layers. There is when we completely focused on some field, and our entire mind is busy with setting up those abstractions and looking how they interact. Uh, it is one thing, but when we are going through the world and need to uh, use a skill, we need a much simpler, something much simpler. We need a model, a mental model that we can conjure in seconds and use efficiently. And this is, I wondered for some time why a lot of people in change work and psychological profession can't help themselves. They seem to be smart people and they seem to know all this psychology, but they seem to be helpless in utilizing it. And this became one of my criteria in looking at psychologists. Do they show signs of using their stuff? And recently I had this thought that this is about simplification. So they learn their psychology on this deep theoretical level in maybe some institution, in some college. Uh, but they fail to create this linked space between different layers of different complexity. Um, fail to create simple uh, techniques and fail to create embodied representations that automatic work automatically. Uh, and if they know simple techniques, they sometimes fail to go into more complex stuff and understand it, kind of unwrap it for themselves. Actually, in order to be proficient in a field, we need all the levels and the links between them and ability to ponder on something on a complex level, but also use it on a simple level and explain things. Anyhow, um, so I'm going through this journal of mine, and a bit of it I didn't finish yet. Maybe I will finish in this session. Um, so the first paragraph is about this very problem of convergence on truth, uh, of maxims and of convergence on truth. Uh, so so I've seen an article. I've seen an article that seems. So I'm looking at scientific articles sometimes in search for facts, in search for something to add to this picture, to this whole picture. And generally, I have more trust to scientific articles because I look for factual information, right? But it's leaking. It's a leaky abstraction. Uh, because often with scientific articles, I got opinions, unfounded opinions. But I have this simplification process going, which turns science as a wall into a trusted resource, and it's automatic simplification. Uh, and I suffer for it because then when someone in a scientific world says something stupid or something that might be true for them but isn't true in other cases, and he isn't considering how it will affect his readers, right? So, and I'm trusting this source because of this automatic simplification going on. It's narrowed down to simply trusting science material. Narrows down. It's what happens. Um, so, and this is a way of some viruses, some uh, one psychologist called junk ideas, I think, junk food. Let me find it. Junk values infecting our mind. Johan Hari came up with this idea of junk values, and I was calling them cultural viruses for a long time. Uh, Things that might accidentally infect our cognition. And and throw a wrench into something someone was doing. So it's a problem. Simplification, elaboration. It's one of those problems that are always present. It's a fundamental problem of information processing, of cognition, and we should simply be aware of it. Uh, and also aware of this need for diversity, for being able to go complex and simple. Complex to verify maybe something. To sometimes we need to put a thing apart and see it from inside in order to find these bugs, these incongruences. And can we trust other people to do that? My experience makes me doubtful about that. We can't even transfer simple knowledge. What to say about some complex stuff? So, software development experience of late. So you probably know this lemmings game and the double slit experiment. So we have this interference pattern. And interestingly, if we fire a single electron, we don't really know where it will land. But if you fire a lot of electrons, then suddenly they are kind of predictable, not truly, and we were talking about it yesterday, that there is an illusion of simplification here. Illusion because we still cannot predict where the electron would land, but now we also have this pattern, and in fact, when we reason about a system, when we try to predict it, we should account both for the unpredictability on the individual electron and also for this pattern. So it actually adds more complexity and make the system even more unpredictable. That's one of my ideas. But we know that a lot of people, a lot of electrons will go this way. So there is a predictability in that uh, they will rush to jump off the cliff like lemons. uh, yeah, strange monodualism. It's on one level it increases the complexity of uh, the system, this macro structure. So inference is a macro structure in the sense that it's larger than the behavior of a single electron. It's behavior of a system of electrons, but it adds the complexity because it's another. Yep. It adds the complexity because it's another thing to consider and to affect the system. But on the other hand, we now know that very likely lots of electrons will land there, right, in the central window. So they will somehow bounce each other virtually and land there. Uh, and and it turns that knowing this, knowing that a lot of people would go some obvious roads, it now becomes a no-brainer to like go ahead and stand there or put somebody there who uh, redirects them. So on one hand, we can't predict how the system would behave because of the added complexity, but on the other hand, we can predict how the majority of the system, or majority of the electrons will behave. So there is this perfectionism. If we try to predict the entire system, uh, it goes out of hand very fast. But if instead we care about some major case, then it becomes simpler. And the major case means that people are basically like lemmings. The majority of them will go the most obvious and most wrong way, most direct way, and only a few of them will look ahead and think for themselves and some. Um, so this kind of informs me on why we should take. I had a mental block of sorts of not taking the simple factors into account because they seem, might seem uh, might seem boring, but actually these boring facts they affect the majority of a system due to this optimization principle simplification. So what I was getting to, and let us see if I would be able to finish this journal on a stream, is that so there are when you play lemmings, uh, you have to plan ahead. You have to see the whole picture, and you also need to communicate it. Excellent connection. So if I see the red dot, I'm simply going to make a pause. So you have to see the whole picture and you have to translate it to put people that would redirect the lemmings, people in place that would redirect the lemmings, or otherwise they will simply keep jumping off the cliff. And it might be an optimization of the entire system because it might be stupid for every lemming to think ahead. Uh, from the point of evolution, it might seem better uh, for someone to think ahead and others simply to follow the science, uh, the road science. And again, there are many different ways to think ahead, many different concerns, many different uh, occupations and angles. So again, it might be stupid for everyone to look at all these angles. Instead, we have one person looking at this angle, one person looking at this angle. We have a cross-functional team can, where someone can look at this angle. And this natural way of things where we have some lemmings focused on simply storming one particular path. It reminds me also of this zombie game. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, this one. So sometimes we need to storm a certain path. So, for example, there might be a guy with a shotgun, and we have no other path through him but to send a lot of zombies uh, to overpower him. So he'll shoot one zombie, second zombie, but the rest will catch up. So we in this game it is important often to make tight working crews, so to speak, tight groups of zombies uh, that would come all together in order to have a minimal space between them. And that way, a guy with a shotgun, he won't have a time to reload and he will be overcome with minimal effort, with minimal spend of resources, with minimal expenditure of resources. Uh, a lot, Hagakure is about basically it offers a suicide mindset where samurai kind of like assassins is a faction of Ali, the second son, uh, who developed this system of belief, elaborated system of belief, where, uh, as one researcher mentions, uh, people would celebrate and mothers would cry in joy and throw a party when their son was killed by being a suicide assassin. So they had this idea that it was honorable to die uh, when you killing someone. It is a bad form, it's a bad taste to survive, right? It's better to kill someone and die in fighting, because it's a sign of the devotion and ticket to heaven, and it also was socially a very powerful boon to the family. Uh, Kind of a flower. I remember this researcher comparing this to a flower, this sacrifice, kind of a result of the life of Anastasia is this clash where he dies in fighting. So Hagakure has something of it also, samurai, dreaming of death, dreaming of being killed by various means. And uh, it says that if picking between life and death, a samurai should always choose death. And it's a bit like throwing zombies at Ambra's at a gunpoint. Uh, and also it's a bit of like fasting. The meaning of this technique, of this desperateness, is indeed in overcoming some resistance, some perceived predicted resistance. Like in a market, for example, we see a resistance of uh, I don't know how in English, concurrence, competition, of competition. Um, in a market, we predict or perceive resistance from competitors going in and doing something, and then we are late to affect the market, change of environment. And then, so the idea is to overcome the competitors by going faster. This is the idea in the OODA loop also. One of the connections. It was dropping. It was dropped. Then surfaced into some. Uh, but when you have time, when you have a lot of time, then there might be other paths around the resistance. So why throw a horde of zombies at someone when we can simply wait for them to go take a piece? to go to take a snack, take a hamburger break, coffee break. uh, or if we have even more time, then we can wait for the building to rot, for new paths to appear. Some games exploit this by, for example, the beautiful uh, Dishonored series, one of the latest games. They have this time travel mechanics when you go back and forth between the timelines, and if a path is closed, you can simply go into another timeline where often the forces of nature and erosion or forces of some social change have created a path for you. So if we value life, we can save life by simply not throwing them on a gunpoint, but allowing them to take a more safer and maybe more pleasant route. Uh, so the choice here then is between this hard and soft approach. And there is a certain the hard approach. Um, it cannot be used all the time. For example, we know that a child, I've seen an article, you can find it. As a child, we can uh, punish punish the child, and it works best if you punish the child, but only 10% of the time. Um, so if there is a special occasion, we, there are different kinds of punishment, soft or hard, but uh, punishment is a full punishment, even if it's soft one, but it works best if it's 10%, Pareto principle, 10-20%. If we simply uh, punish the child always doing the hard road, then it breaks down very fast. If we doing just the soft road and always trying to explain stuff, I had a very I had an experience that got to my skin properly, got under my skin properly when I was a child, and uh, I was working on a computer, and my father couldn't sleep, but I was ignoring his plight. Uh, not that I was failed to understand it. I was understanding it, but my prioritization, my inner prioritization, simply was hooked onto something. Like we are so often hooked into, and I was working at the time. I was hooked into all this motivational structure that was created by as a development process. I was integrated into some social network that was feeding me with this motivation, and priority of my father's suffering was very, very low. And it was kind of automatic. I was thinking, yeah, I should shut down the PC, but I was just working on until one day he went off. Uh, how would you say it? Until one day he became very angry, and I kind of ran away from him in the bathroom, uh, simply from seeing him in that state, which was very surprising. And in that moment, and from this moment, I developed an understanding that he is a person, that he is a human being, and I wouldn't jump to that conclusion. He was like a thing to me, like another thing. Uh, just he just wasn't relevant to anything. And I developed this embodied understanding of him that he is a free human being, that he's another person, which there is an interesting article by some transaction analyst who classifies the relationship between people. He says that this understanding that another person is another person, it's actually a very high level of development, psychological development that few people reach. And for most people, other people are just things. And uh, I figured this out on this embodied level. Then it starts reaching up my other levels of consciousness as well. When he became angry, yeah. So as Kenneth says, there should be in leadership, there are different channels that should be opened. Hard and soft approach, there should be diversity. Uh, but sometimes the entire process is built around value stream mapping, which is a kind of fashion. So the entire process is a constant. They even call it that way, sprint, real development sprint, and they're going from sprint to sprint. They're always running. It's a constant. Constant fasting, and we do not fast all the time. If you want good results, we fast only at special times when we have some particularly hard problem to solve, or when we just want to keep this practice going of being able to use hard approaches. But we do not fast all the time. Uh, so in the long process, you can afford when you have a when you are playing a long game, you can afford for things to fall into place you can work more opportunistically instead of throwing zombies or your, like, I don't know, workforce onto a problem after problem by hyper focusing them. You can allow them to um, wander a bit and to play a bit and to discover a wider array of approaches, and then you can wait for them to fall into place and for opportunities to emerge. And interestingly, it needs repetition as well. So there I go that repetition is needed to arouse lemmings. But we need repetition also. Uh, I have this process I call wringing clauses. I'm trying to align myself to the webcam in order to, for both my hands to be seen. Wringing clauses. So on one hand we have the current moment, on the other hand we have some direction. And wringing clauses are happening simply by keeping both in focus, because there is a tension then between them, like a current between a plus and minus in electricity. There is a tension between plus and minus, which creates current. So likewise, when we have both the goal and the current moment in focus, there is between a tension, and this tension it helps in narrowing down the solution space uh, and helping people to converge on solutions instead of each doing their own. This tension helps them to work on a common goal and find a common ground. But it's also opportunistic, because you're not forcing them a certain way. So it's like let me try to draw it. So repetition is a constant application of force. It's like a light. We have a constant force, but when we work in a social setting where information has to go from one element to another, from one neuron to another, from one person to another, from one team to another, we have these discrete units. So we want to apply a constant force, but it often takes the form of discrete units of photons, and so this is a repetition. And like in self-hypnosis, we use the repetition, or in hypnosis, of course. And it is indeed, this repetition is simply a way to apply a constant force to the problem. Constant, not necessarily constant as in constant, but sustained effort, sustained force. Applying sustained effort at the problem. This is why we need repetition in this. And in spinning, repetition and spinning, right? So a lot of hypnosis and simply spinning. So basically, giving you the same the same input, but in a way that wouldn't make you bored, and helping you thus to maintain this sustained effort. Uh, so with this repetition, we can so we have a current moment, and we can apply it to build a certain path, for the lemmings, right? So we apply applied to create this road sign, this road sign, this road sign. Or we can apply repetition to create a goal and to maintain a goal and let the the agents, the lemmings, let them be a bit more self-consciousness and converge on towards that goal on their own. So instead of applying force and energy towards constant direction of the lemmings, we apply it to kind of electromagnetic pull between the moment and the goal. So let's write this down somehow. Hmm. Tightly enough. In order so that the zombies are coming faster than they can reload. On the other hand, if of time and or war and or if we are working the abundance mindset, then we can be where is this repetition? Repetition. This sustained effort on the direction, and it isn't even a goal. It is a direction, because well, I can maybe refer to James Street because we are a part of a larger system. Uh, so if we have, and it's a moving system. It's not like a dot on a map. Even the maps, given enough time, they change. But we're not. Yeah, come up. We're not. We're not talking about the land mass often, but rather about some more dynamic system like society, which changes more rapidly. And or like inner life, which can also change rapidly. Personal life. So if you simply put a dot on this map of inner life or map of a society, then uh, the path to this dot might be abstracted, the dot might go away completely, like this island sunk, whatever Atlantida sunk. Just a metaphor. Uh, and we might be missing valuable opportunities if we are set on reaching this point. So instead of setting a point, we picking a direction, a general idea of what we want to happen. Uh, and we moving in that direction, and there might be opportunities along the way that might be very different from the point we have envisioned. But if we are moving in the direction instead of towards a specific point, we are much more flexible in picking these opportunities and reaching maybe even a better place or a more accessible place, more accessible to us, or reaching it faster, or whatever. If you have time and or if you are working from the abundance inside, then you can use the repetition, the sustained effort on direction. In the direction and the present should be done that. I just will look how I usually quote this. So I quote this with the usual quotes. Creating that pool between the direction and the present. Close. So I guess that's it. I finished the journal. Thanks for participating in this process and witnessing my live streaming